Hey, it's a show on the radio. Doug Wead is a New York Times bestselling author, presidential historian. His new book is Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency. Hey, Doug, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
No, it's, the book, it's nice to talk to you again, and congratulations on the new book. You've written about many presidents over the years. What made you decide to write this book, sir?
Well, I was reading so many books, Joe, and none of them were primary sourced. They were all sources were anonymous. You'd follow the citations, and the people would publicly deny that they said what the author said they said, that the stories didn't take place. They didn't have multiple sources. I love history, and I thought, in 100 years, 200 years, only the sourced material is going to be of any use. Historians, primary sources. What did the president say? What did he think? What did Melania say and think? What did Jared Ivanka? I wanted to capture what they thought if I could do it. I wanted to talk to them.
Wow, well, you had extraordinary access in writing this book, Doug. You not only had the president, but his family, staff speaking to you on the record. Were you surprised they gave you this degree of access?
I was surprised, and it happened in a flash. I had spent a year or so preparing the groundwork for it and asking them and telling them, look, every president, and one meeting with Ivanka, I said, every president gets an oil portrait and every president gets an official history of their administration. I want to write that history. In 100 years, they'll still be writing books about the Trump family. And whether you're viewed as some terrible family like the Borgias or some great family like the Kennedys depends on the primary source material that is captured right now. And so I finally got the nod. And in a flash, one morning, the president had me into the Oval Office, and he just said, well, I'm going to let you tape record. I'm going to show you these letters from Kim Jong-un. We're going to let you talk to anybody in the cabinet. So he just made a decision, and boom, that was it.
Wow. So he was behind the Resolute desk. You're there on the other side. The recorder is on the desk. And he gave you were there phone calls happening around him? Were there people coming in, Mr. President? We need you just for a second. I mean, did you get kind of just a complete one-on-one quiet time with the President Trump?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of all that. When I walk into the Oval Office, first of all, there was a year of politics holding me back. General Kelly didn't want the book. I later learned other people didn't want the book. Some of the Trump family wanted the book. So when the dam finally broke, they bring me into the Oval Office, and he's standing, and he's holding these papers. He's waving them like he's holding a treat for a dog to jump up and bark. He says, without any introduction, he says, these are my private correspondence with Kim Jong-un, and they don't want you to see them, but I'm going to let you have them. And he's waving them up in his hands. And so we went into that the Monica Lewinsky hallway, went into that private dining room, and we had a lunch together, and we just talked and talked. It was really fun.
The Monica Lewinsky hallway. Oh my gosh! Is that the way they refer to it like that? They call it that. Oh my gosh, Doug, that's unbelievable, man. So what makes chatting with President Trump different from other presidents that you've interviewed or written about, Doug Wead?
He's fearless. He says what he thinks. I would have long conversations with George W. Bush, and I'd travel with him out on the road, on the airplane, private planes, commercial planes, you name it. Yeah. And we'd talk, and he would grunt and nod and smile and roll his eyes, but he wouldn't speak. So you had to figure out what he wants, like a mafia chieftain. What does he want me to do? And I'm going to do this and this. Is that okay? And he'd go, So there was plenty of deniability. With Donald Trump, he's just out with it. I said, what do you think of Emmanuel Macron? He said, I think he's a deceitful little guy. That was Donald Trump.
Really? Oh my God! This is the book, Doug Wead's book, Inside Trump's White House. This This is going to be great, man. I'm telling you, the real story of his presidency inside Trump's White House. So, can we talk about Melania for a second? I have such respect for her because I could, and again, people know that listen to the program, Doug. I always talk about I would do these nonprofit events in Jersey, and I was with Kimberly, my then beautiful wife. And then Melania would come in with citizen Donald J. Trump. She could not have been more warm, more gracious, more nice, more pleasant, more smart. Nobody smarter. I mean, as elegant as you possibly can imagine. And you had a chance to chat with Melania for this book, Doug.
No, I did not. But I chatted with everybody around her. So even Tiffany, which had not given an interview since her father had become president. So all of my Melania stories, and they're great stories, came from Laura and Eric and White House staff and translators who worked with her in foreign trips and her press secretary. But they're wonderful stories. The Trump kids say that she and the president are just a hoot, that they tease each other. They're very playful lovers. One story that I thought was cute, at dinner time, very often the president will act with puffed up importance. He'll say, "Melania, honey, isn't this great, this adventure I'm taking you on? You'd have never had this without me." And she says, "Oh, yeah, sure, right, great, thank you very much." Because they know, they're aware of the horror they're going through. They're not blind to it. But outwardly, if you interview them, when you first interview them, they'll say, "Oh, we're privileged, we're patriots, we're serving our country, don't worry about us." But privately, they know.
Yeah, Doug, talking with Doug Wead, a New York Times bestselling author, a good guy, and Inside Trump's White House. Just Google Doug Wead, Inside Trump's White House. You got to get this book. You got to get this book. I have to tell you, Doug, just and we always go back and forth with our producer Frankie Five Boroughs Morano on what questions to ask Doug Wead. But I got to ask you, I'm feeling this is just me, just off the cuff. I'm feeling that Donald J. Trump. I've known him on and off peripherally, never not like a friend, but an acquaintance, and I've worked for him many times. And I just find the man fascinating. Think he's doing a great job as president. But doesn't he feel? And correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, because you know best. Doesn't he feel like, you know what? I belong here. I feel like President Trump says, you know what? I was made to do this. I'm here. Because when I saw him a few weeks ago at the White House for paying tribute to the Italian-American community, which I so appreciated that he was the president to say, you know what? It is Columbus Day. You know what? We thank the Italians for all they've done. And I looked at him. He wasn't even breathing heavy, man. There was no, I would, and it was the day that Nancy Pelosi did the finger pointing thing. And I would have been, myself, oh my gosh, get me out of here. He seems like he was just born to do this. Does he feel that in his head, do you think, Doug Wead?
Boy, Joe, that's a really astute observation, and I believe totally that he does. The first day I describe in the book, the first day in the Oval Office, he tried to do everything. It wasn't just turn an economy around and jobs. It was ISIS. It was bring the hostages back. It was a long day. He wanted to do everything. Here's how he described it to me. The issue you're bringing up, Joe? Yeah. He said, you buy a company when it's down. You don't buy a company when it's up, because then when you try to resell it, you can't show improvement. So you always buy a company when it's been trashed, when it's down, then everything you do is up. He said, that's why I decided to run for president. We had 16 years of a Republican and Democrat president who failed again and again. Everything they did was the wrong thing. It was a perfect time to be president.
man, Doug Wead, you got to read this book. Doug's book is Inside Trump's White House: The Real Story of His Presidency. Doug, it is so great to always chat with you, man. I love your demeanor, and you've been in the most places that none of us will ever go. Doug Wead has been there with many presidents. Now you've got to check out this book, Inside Trump's White House.